At 5:08 on a drizzly Saturday morning, my phone buzzed against the nightstand hard enough to rattle the glass of water beside it. The screen lit up with a push alert from my checking account. $22.15 approved at Maple Street Diner, Portland, OR. It might as well have been a siren. My girlfriend Emily had sworn she'd pulled the midnight to 6 shift at Providence Medical, the one that always left her bleary-eyed and smelling faintly of disinfectant. But Maple Street Diner opened at 5. Nobody doing rounds in the ICU was ordering Belgian waffles at dawn. My pulse spiked, yet I lay still, listening. The apartment was silent, except for the whisper of rain and the rhythmic hum of the fridge. Her side of the bed was already cold. I swung my feet onto the rug and caught an unmistakable scent, fresh cinnamon and dark roast coffee, clinging to the hoodie she'd tossed over the chair. Not antiseptic, not stale hospital air, but the diner's signature aroma that used to make us detour after late-night movies. The first thread in the sweater of trust had just snapped. Emily and I met 4 years ago at that very diner. They had a corny tradition. Couples doodled a heart on the back of the paper menu, scribbling initials inside. Then the server pinned the keepsake to a giant corkboard by the register. On our second date, she wrote M+E with a Sharpie that bled slightly through the flimsy stock. The waitress, amused by Emily's excitement, handed us a clean copy to take home. I framed it. Cheap dollar store frame, pride of place on my desk. I stared at that faded heart now, and something inside me lurched. Over the past month, little anomalies had piled up like unread emails. Late shifts swapped at the last minute, second showers after just coffee with coworkers, a Lyft receipt for a neighborhood nowhere near the hospital. But the diner charge felt different. It was a breadcrumb I could follow. I opened our kitchen catch-all drawer, the one where receipts multiplied like rabbits, and fished through Target coupons and grocery lists until I found 6 Maple Street slips dating back 3 weeks. Some for a single entree, but 4 clearly rang up 2 separate plates. Her neat script signed every credit card slip. That sweater thread was unraveling fast. I dressed in yesterday's jeans, grabbed my light rain jacket, and slid the framed menu into the inside pocket like evidence. Outside, the street lamps painted slick reflections across Belmont. I climbed into my 12-year-old Tacoma, the starter protesting before catching. The dash clock read 4:34. She'd be there soon if the pattern held. Wipers beat time as I drove the 15 minutes to Maple Street, parking 2 spots down from the windowed storefront. It was still half dark, neon signs sputtering. I killed the engine, heart drumming louder than the rain, and waited. I didn't wait long. At exactly 5:01, a silver Honda Civic rolled to the curb. Emily stepped out first, ponytail bobbing, still wearing pale blue scrubs but paired with her favorite leather jacket, something no hospital would allow on the floor. From the passenger side emerged Chris Reynolds, the pulmonary resident who'd popped up in her stories more often lately, always tagged but never quite explained. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides and wrapped her in an embrace longer than friends manage in public. I watched his hands settle on her waist as naturally as breathing. They ducked inside, unaware of the truck idling behind tinted glass. My palms were slick when I finally pushed through the diner door. The bell jingled like any other morning. Grill sizzles and low chatter filled the room. Chris and Emily sat in the corner booth, our booth, laughing over steaming mugs. I walked straight to the corkboard, finding our ancient menu in seconds. Time had yellowed the page, but M+E still pulsed like a fresh wound. I unpinned it carefully, tracing the ink ridge where the marker once caught. Then I crossed the linoleum, slid the relic onto their table beside 2 untouched plates, and set my key ring, minus the apartment key, on top. Emily's eyes widened, color draining from her cheeks. Chris froze mid-sip. Neither of them spoke first, so I did. "You know this place remembers hearts," I said, voice surprisingly steady. "That one's been reminding me every day, but mine doesn't remember us anymore." I looked at Chris. "Maybe give it a new story." I lifted Emily's coffee, black, no sugar, just how she taught me to drink it, and placed my ring into the cup, where it hit porcelain with a muted clink. "Consider it closed." The waitress, Hazel, recognized the artifact in an instant. She'd served us on our 3rd anniversary and loaned Emily her pen again. These details tumbled in my mind as if from someone else's life. Hazel's gaze flicked from the framed menu to Emily's trembling hands. I settled the bill for both breakfasts, leaving a 50% tip, and turned toward the door. Rain had eased to mist, the sky paling over the Willamette. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed once more, confirmation that my new solo checking card was active. Behind me, Maple Street's bell chimed again. I didn't look back. The truck's heater fought the chill while I drove aimlessly through quiet neighborhoods, letting streets I'd memorized feel unfamiliar. Questions pressed hard. How long? How many lies? What did I miss? But the larger answer was already clear. I pulled into Laurelhurst Park and watched early dog walkers amble across wet grass. Breathing burned, yet a strange weight had lifted. Certainty, even when brutal, is lighter than suspicion. My notifications feed pinged, friends sending memes, my brother reminding me about a Sunday softball game, but I silenced everything. I needed the emptiness, the space to imagine life, minus the framed heart, minus the cinnamon coffee mornings, minus her. Somewhere behind clouds the sun was fighting to show up, just like it had every day before I met Emily, and would every day after. I threw the truck in gear, merging back onto Stark, ready to let the city shuffle its deck and deal me something uncreased. I spent the rest of that gray morning coasting east on I-84, windshield wipers squeaking against the last of the drizzle, until the green highway signs for Bend began to roll by. Emily and I had always talked about hiking Smith Rock but never found the weekend. The idea that I could do it alone felt equal parts empowering and pathetic, so I pulled into a truck stop instead, ordered burned coffee, and scrolled through my unread texts. The first was from Emily, stamped 6:12 a.m. Emily. Matt, please pick up. We need to talk. It's not what it looked like. Right underneath, a Venmo request from Chris for half the tip on the breakfast I'd already paid for. That audacity was almost funny. I rejected it with a single emoji, clown face, and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. Somewhere between mile markers 98 and 110, anger burned off and left a dull, aching vacancy, like a tooth that had just been pulled and left nerves humming in the hollow. By noon, I was back in Portland, rolling into the apartment lot we'd shared for 3 years. Emily's Civic was gone, probably parked at the hospital, where the alibi still lived. I walked up the stairwell that smelled of wet carpet and garlic from the neighbor's lunch, unlocked our door, and was hit by an inventory of memories masquerading as furniture. The thrift store couch where we'd watched Stranger Things premieres. The IKEA shelf still displaying fake succulents because she killed every real one. Every object wanted to tell a story. I wanted them all silent. I loaded a single duffel, gym clothes, laptop, the framed paper heart, and nothing else. The lease had both our names, but the place felt like hers now, stitched with tiny betrayals I hadn't recognized until sunrise. On the fridge I left a note, the same size as our diner menu, blank except for my signature and the date. A reminder for her. A receipt for me. My buddy Jason lived 10 blocks away, in a converted Craftsman that forever smelled like sawdust and cheap cologne. He answered the door in basketball shorts, took one look at the duffel, and stepped aside without asking. That's the kind of friend who keeps a couch clean just in case your world detonates. I crashed face first till late afternoon, waking to the muffled thud of Jason's free throw practice on the driveway. When I joined him, he bounced me the ball and said nothing. We shot in silence, me bricking everything, him retrieving every rebound, until sweat and dusk blurred together and the ache in my chest felt indistinguishable from muscle fatigue. My phone pinged again. Another banking alert. $147.60. Home Goods, Clackamas. Emily's card. Home Goods only sells throw pillows and scented candles, a nesting store. Peter Pan reflex kicked in. Was she buying comfort for guilt, or new decor for a life without me? Either way, the purchase made a hollow cave where jealousy usually lives. I felt only distance growing like a fault line. 2 days passed. I spent them drifting between Jason's couch, the community center gym, and 80-hour playlists on shuffle. Anything but stillness. On Tuesday, I finally answered Emily's call. Her voice came through thin and rehearsed. Matt, can we meet? Please. I'll explain everything. Explain? I heard myself say. I watched you write a new heart over breakfast. Silence crackled. Then she inhaled, shaky. It started after that 14-hour shift last month. Chris was on cardio call. We grabbed pancakes to decompress. It felt harmless until it didn't. I was stupid. But Saturday, he kissed me. I freaked out. You walked in. You freaked out after ordering 2 omelets? I wanted the words to slice, and they did. I heard it in the catch of her breath. I deserve that, she said. But I still love you. Let's talk in person, please. I agreed to meet at Laurelhurst, neutral ground. Wednesday, 5 p.m., the sky a flat sheet of pewter. She arrived wearing civilian clothes, jeans, a mariner's hoodie, eyes rimmed red yet determined. She began with the apology you'd expect. Patches of tears, swears it meant nothing, vows of counseling. I let her speak until the park lamps flickered on, until her words stacked up like dominoes without a final tile. When she finally stopped, I handed her the framed menu. I'm giving this back, I said. It's history, not a souvenir. She traced the heart with a thumb, voice cracks widening into sobs. I wish I could erase the new one. You did, I said, surprising us both. I pulled from my pocket a photo. Hazel had texted it Monday, showing an empty space on the diner corkboard where a fresh heart had been. Apparently, after I left, Emily had asked Hazel for that brand new menu and shredded it. Gestures everywhere, but time doesn't recycle. I told her I wouldn't torch the apartment or nuke her in the group chat. I'd keep whatever piece we could salvage, but love requires a memory stronger than paper. Emily nodded, choking on a sorry that sounded more tired than contrite. We sat on separate benches until the rain restarted, the conversation dissolving with the droplets. Weeks stretched. Paperwork for breaking the lease, forwarding mail, closing joint streaming accounts. Divorce-light admin tasks that hurt in surprisingly sharp ways. I moved into a studio above a Vietnamese bakery. Every dawn, the smell of baguettes and star anise floated through cracked windows. The framed menu stayed in a closet for a while, then moved to the dumpster behind the building, then disappeared long before trash day. Maybe some scavenger thought it art. One Saturday, exactly a month after the sunrise that shattered things, my phone buzzed at 5:07 a.m. Adrenaline surged until I saw the alert. $6, Rose City Coffee Roasters. My own card this time, a scheduled subscription I'd forgotten I set. I laughed aloud in the half-light, the sound bouncing strange against new walls. No diner, no duplicate receipt, just coffee beans shipping to a fresh address. I brewed the first cup, stepped onto the fire escape balcony, and watched the eastern sky blush. Somewhere out there, corkboard hearts kept multiplying, relationships scribbling themselves into myth. Mine was no longer pinned to public memory, but the heartbeat in my chest felt steady, present, stubbornly mine. And as the city stirred awake, I realized that was the only balance that needed checking. Mornings kept slipping into routine. Alarm at 6, jog along the esplanade, congee and drip coffee before logging into work. But some Tuesdays still ambushed me with the phantom smell of diner cinnamon or the faintest echo of Emily's laugh. Therapy helped. So did Tuesday night rec softball with Jason's friends, where a double off the chain link felt like proof that I could still send something flying and watch it land exactly where I aimed. One cool Friday in October, Hazel texted, "Corkboard's coming down tomorrow for remodel. Thought you'd want a heads up." I stared at the message, thumb hovering, until impulse overrode common sense and typed, "Need a hand?" Sunrise found me back in the same Maple Street parking lot, rain beating on the truck hood like déjà vu. Inside, the diner smelled of fresh paint and sawdust. Half the booths were draped in plastic, the corkboard already leaning against a wall like a retired billboard. Hazel waved me over, ponytail jammed through a painter's cap, cheeks flushed. We'd texted sporadically, memes, playlist swaps, but this was the first real meeting since the implosion. Her smile held neither pity nor awkwardness, just welcome. Together we pried rusty thumbtacks free, dropping yellowed paper hearts into a cardboard box marked Archive. Some bore crisp black ink, others sun-faded to the color of old straw. In one corner I spotted a fresh, jagged tear where Emily's new heart had been. I half expected a pang, but the space looked simply available. Hazel's playlist shuffled Motown through her phone speaker while we worked. When Stevie Wonder crooned "Signed, Sealed, Delivered," she laughed and said, "Fate's trolling you." I flipped the tack hammer, caught it by the handle. "Nah," I said. "Feels more like a remix." At noon we broke for grilled cheese sandwiches behind the counter, perched on milk crates because every stool wore a drop cloth. Hazel talked about her plan to finish community college, maybe teach kindergarten. I told her about the UX project that kept me chained to Figma files. Halfway through the meal, she nudged the archive box with a sneaker. "You want to keep yours?" I shook my head. History, remember? Not a souvenir. But as the words left my mouth, I realized that was only half true. I didn't want the old heart, yet some stubborn part of me wanted to leave a new mark, not plastered to the wall for strangers, but somewhere still mine. An idea flickered. When the last thumbtack popped free, we hoisted the corkboard onto Hazel's pickup. She'd store it in her dad's basement for nostalgia seekers. Back inside, fresh drywall gleamed where the memory patchwork had hung. Before the paint crew arrived, I borrowed a Sharpie and wrote a single line in the lower left corner, small enough to vanish under primer: "Certain hearts learn to remember forward." Hazel watched without comment, a half-smile ghosting her lips. We locked up, the diner silent except for the rain ticking on metal vents. In the parking lot, she fished keys from her jeans, hesitated. "Coffee sometime?" "Different place, no corkboards." "Thought you'd never ask," I said, surprised by how light the words felt. We exchanged phones. Her contact appeared as Hazel, with a sun emoji. She insisted balance the cloud already in my weather app. Then she climbed into her truck, taillights glowing red as she pulled away. That night, back in my bakery-scented studio, I leaned against the window and watched the last customers leave the noodle shop across the street. Rain glazed the asphalt, reflecting neon like a low-budget constellation. I opened notes on my phone and drafted a message I never intended to send. "Dear future heart, here's what I know. Mornings can betray you, but they can also hand you grilled cheese after demolition." I saved it, unsent. A private corkboard. Weeks rolled on. Hazel and I traded playlists, then coffees, then a spontaneous trip to Sauvie Island when we both claimed we'd forgotten what silence sounded like outside city limits. We weren't rushing definitions. The absence of labels felt like breathing room rather than avoidance. Emily drifted to the statistical edge of my life, an occasional forwarded mail envelope, a polite text confirming final utility balances. No venom, no sparks, just static. What surprised me most was the lack of regret. Not the absence of pain, I'd paid that toll, but the clarity that followed. The heart turns out to be less like glass and more like moss. Tear it from one stone, it clings to another greener surface, still pulling sunlight out of fog. One damp Sunday at dawn, I found myself jogging past Maple Street again. Renovations were finished. Inside, the new wall hosted a digital screen cycling photos of patrons instead of paper menus. Empty space, infinite rotation. The neon open flickered, inviting as ever. I caught my reflection in the dark glass, hood up, breath misting, and realized I wasn't measuring footsteps against old ache anymore. I was just running. A buzz in my pocket. "Hazel?" "Bakery opens in 10. Meet for croissants?" I thumbed back. On my way, slowed to a walk and let the morning's quiet wrap around me. No alerts threatened, no diner receipts pinged alarms. Just a path forward, lit by street lamps fading into dawn, steady as the pulse in my wrist and wide as the possibilities between one heart and the next.